I recently posted a video of this bike. Well, that bike yesterday. Um, and basically I refurbished it. It was all rusted up and kind of in bad shape, unusable, and I pretty much completely disassembled it, cleaned it up, cleaned the rust off of it everywhere. I didn't repaint it, but I did put a clear coat over it so that it doesn't keep rusting a bunch. You know, and I aired up the tires. I didn't change them. They're all crusty and terrible, but whatever. And I didn't really clean up the wheels any. They're all rusty, but whatever. Huge spokes. These things are like monster thick, kind of old school spokes on there. Any rate, nobody seemed to be too interested in the bike, even though it was, you know, a perfectly good bike. It's not a fancy bike. It's not that nice of a bike. It's just, it's a bike. It's a usable bike. It's a very simple bike. It, you know, this part steers, this part you pedal, that part you brake. There's no cables, there's no complications. It's all sort of self-contained and simple bits of machinery bolted onto a hunk of metal. You know, it's not all new parts or all old used parts, but they're all completely refurbished. Take them all apart, clean them up good, grease them up, re-lube everything, so it works just like it did when it was new. Maybe not quite as good as when it was new, but relatively close. So it was a perfect good functional bike that was restored, and nobody had really any interest in it. So I rode it around a little bit. Wasn't the best bike, wasn't the worst bike. It was just a good old-fashioned bike. But nobody really was interested in the bike, so I turned it into a project. Yesterday what I did is I want to chop it, which means add some forks and tilting it back, adding some rake. Typically what you do is you hack in here, you cut a chunk out of this tube here, and you cut in a relief into this tube here, and you tilt it back to where you want, and then what I do is I take the chunk of tube that I take out, I sand it down, I cut a slit in it so it's smaller than the original tube, and I fit that inside the tube where I've cut it. And then when I put the other tube over it, it's got two pieces of tube here basically where the weld is, so that the weld part is nice and sturdy. Hope I was holding the camera right. I can't see the screen. Anyway, so when you cut a hunk of tube out, if you can put a piece of tube behind it, then slide the tube over it and weld it up, you'll get a much stronger, sturdier joint. And that's usually what I do when I do that sort of thing. And normally with the chopper, you hack into this and you give it some more rake, and then you hack into here and you extend the forks out. You want to hack in between here and here usually to extend the forks, because you don't want to cut into this curve here that will accentuate the curve. So you want to cut into the straight part so that you don't accentuate the amount of trail that you're adding. So, because you get a whole bunch when you put a bunch of rake in it here, so you don't really want to add any more. That would be just making things worse. Cut it here, extend it out a foot, 2 foot, whatever it is, in a nice straight line. When you do that, it's important to get those tubes straight, otherwise the wheel won't fit in right. And usually what I do is I cut the tubes while they're on the wheel, and so that it holds those two tubes sort of relatively in place, and then I fit the tubes in between and weld it up with the wheel and everything on there so that everything's relatively in line and not twisted. I've also got this bike over here I could use. It's pretty much scrap parts. It's all rusted up and it's in terrible shape, so it's basically scrap. I could take it apart and clean up the parts and maybe reuse some of them. And if I take these forks here, they're pretty straight. See how they don't curve forward like most of them usually do. If that will mount up to here, then all I got to do is figure out how to make the bottom of that mount onto here. So let's explain what's going on here. Okay, so I'm trying to make a chopper out of this. I've already come in here, cut some reliefs, cut this here, and if you'll notice, this used to be here, and it's moved all the way back here. Got that chop working out really good. I left a little bit of area here, not much. I can take and dent in this frame if I need to, like if I want to put a tire that's a little bit bigger in there or something like that. I could dent this frame if I have to, but I think I've got enough space in here that I don't have to do anything. This is all welded up good enough. Basically the way this worked is I cut 2 slits and I took a screwdriver and I pounded out the middle section there, and that allowed that I just cut relief a space there so that it could like that, and so that it can bend up. When I cut this, it moved this up. That part's all done good, and we like that. I think I'm liking that. Left these here. I could cut these off, but I think I might actually put batteries here. One here, one here, and one here, and put a motor on here. So we're going to leave those for now. Maybe not. Not sure. As it is, it's pretty difficult to ride. It is a rideable bike right now, but it's pretty difficult to ride. It's like being stuck in 5th gear. It's just a lot of work, hard to, you know, and it just, there's a lot of drag on it. These tires and whatnot are not very, you know, smooth. They create a lot of drag, so it's just like a whole lot of work riding this bike, and it's more work than I want to do. And I might hook up a motor. I've got a 24-inch, that's a 26-inch, but I got a 24-inch wheel. It's a little bit shorter, but it's got a motor in it, and I can hook up some batteries here, put a motor on the front wheel, and it's motorized, and so that solves half the problem. And I've got some better wheels for the back. I might be able to make a 5-speed, which will make it easier for, you know, taking off and all that other stuff. So we might do all those things, but first, and it's actually the bicycle handles really good right now. It sits a little tall, but that's okay. And even with these horrible handlebars, I hate the handlebars, but it steers just fine the way it is. But I got to put some rake in it. I got to lay it down, lay these forks down, get it sticking out there, and make it more choppery, because that's more fun. And to do that, we got to add some rake. And whenever I add rake, usually I'll cut a relief in here, and I'll cut a chunk out of here and bend this over, and I put a little short section of tube inside there, so that when I weld it up, it's got that metal behind it, so I can get a good thick weld on it, because I'm not that good of a welder. But by putting a small section of tube in there, it makes it easy for me to get a good strong enough weld going on. However, trying to find, with these two not parallel lines and whatnot, trying to find a place where I could do that, where I cut like a little pie-shaped piece out and a bigger pie-shaped piece out, is been very difficult. And you know, I'm looking at, well, okay, so if I cut it here and here, where will it, you know, I don't want to just cut straight through the tube like here and straight through the tube here and then have 2 pieces of tube to join. What I want to do, so I want to cut a relief so that this half of this pipe or a quarter of this pipe is still holding it together, and then cut a chunk here, and then just sort of bend it over till these 2 pieces meet and these 2 pieces meet, and I can put a section in here, or maybe the section I cut out is often a perfect size for it. And I'll grind off the paint a little bit and cut a slit in it so that I can make the section that I cut out smaller than these 2 pieces. Just cut a slit in it, and maybe cut like an 1/8 inch out, and then squish it down, and then it'll fit inside the tube, and then you can weld it up. But there'll be some paint. You gotta prep the piece, the donor piece that you cut out. You gotta prep it by taking the paint and stuff off. I could do that now, take a bunch of paint off. That's probably the smart way to do it. Strip all the paint off the section that you're gonna cut out. But see, the thing is, I'm not exactly sure where to cut right now. What I'm thinking is, here, if I cut a section out here, think that will line up close enough with that I can get it, and it'll keep a halfway decent line. It won't be the best line, but it'll still be a good curve. When I do cut into here, it will kind of mess with this line. It won't be quite right anymore. And this one here will not be quite right anymore. That's okay. However, exactly where to cut to get the right angle, and what's the right angle on? Pretty much any rake that I add will make it harder to steer. So you don't want to add so much that it's impossible to steer, but you want to add some so that it's that front wheel gets out there more. It'll lower. It's like this right now, and what we want is more like that, or obtuse of an angle instead of this near right angle here. We want something that's more like from that to that. If that makes any sense. In fact, we can show you. So you know that's some rake. That's a lot of rake. That's a ridiculous amount of rake. We extended. This is actually 2 bikes turned into one. And we want more rake. So we got to add some rake. And that's what we're doing today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, probably the smart way to do it would be cut into this tube first, cut several reliefs in here so that it can squish in, while this piece here holds everything together, because making several cuts into this while this isn't here is going to be the harder thing to do. And then once I got a couple of in there, then I can cut a chunk out and get in. Exactly where do I want to make those cuts though? Let's put some tape there. And there. I'm going to need to cut some in here. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Because getting this in there is going to be kind of hard. Actually, we can do this. We can plug it in. Alright, well that one's done. Now we're getting some of that rake that we wanted, but the tubes are not lining up as good as I thought. What can we do about that? What can we do about that? Can I pull this? I need more rake. How much rake is going to be enough rake? Alrighty, let's see, put that. So is that the angle I want? Well, I'm not sure. That's a lot of angle. I think we'll keep it. I think to get them boards to line up, we'll cut a relief here. Not perfect. I think it'll be good enough. It might be perfect. So now it's just a bunch of busy work. Gotta clean this up, take all the paint and sharp edges off, cut a slit in it or cut a chunk out of it, squish it down a little bit so that it fits inside that tube. Just open that up, slide her in about halfway, and then fit this over. Sounds easy, I know, right? It won't be so. It'll be tricky, but it won't be that big of a deal. Then I can weld it together, and then I can grind these down a little bit and weld these up so let's just show you what it was before. Was something like that, you know. Now crazy how that little bit of tube, that little bit made that much difference. Pretty neat, huh? Alrighty, well, we can take off the safety gear and get to work. We'll do another take just in case that one didn't go through. So here we are looking at the chopper again. It's gone through some changes. I put a different seat on. That other one was just like a bike rack. This one I cut these, sliced and bent it, and then welded it back, and did a fairly mediocre job of the welding and the grinding and all that. Not the best. I do like these handlebars, but they're tilted forward way a lot more than hopefully they'll end up. But they are getting, this bike is getting close. It's rideable. I can ride it the way it is like this, and it's not too uncomfortable or anything. Could be better. The height is a little high where the seat is, so I kind of hope that I can do something to get the seat down lower and maybe back farther, and then we can tilt the handlebars back farther, more in line with the forks. That would be good. And probably we'll put a 24-inch tire on the front instead of this 26. I have an electric 24-inch tire with a motor in it and all that. I think I'm going to hook it up here, and maybe have a brake, maybe not have a brake. I'm not sure. It's got the one coaster brake, so it's got a brake. And it's a chopper, so you don't want it to be too safe, having too many brakes. But at any rate, it's getting close. It's totally rideable as it is, except for the rain and the hill. And it's actually getting pretty close. The geometry is getting pretty near where I'm gonna like it. But there are a few more changes to make. We'll see how it goes.